What's up, lovely souls? We're back for another episode of Men Have Feelings Too. Who knew? Today I have Joe Tabbanella. He was my most favorite teacher at HMI. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I remember when we were getting mentors at HMI, and they told us that we could only have like the mentors that were women. If we were women, I was like, maybe I should say that like I identify as like a male because I really liked your teachings. But then I was like, no, I'm just gonna find a female. So yeah, you and the other Joe are like my favorite teachers at HMI. So I'm so honored to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell me, you were like on the fast track to being an actor, and what changed?
Well, yeah, it's a long story, but um, when I was 19, as you know, I had an experience with what we would call like letting go or the law of attraction or manifestation. And it was a miraculous experience. And it had a component to it that was so clear. That component was so clearly associated and almost causal for what happened. You know, I changed something in my mind, which changed my state, which changed my attention style, which changed how I felt, which changed where I walked. And that resulted in me winning the money I so desperately needed. And I thought, is there something here? You know, that this is a strange thing. I was wanting something and praying and wishing and hoping and then I hear this little intuitive voice that guided me into a different perspective. And that day, I won the money I needed. And back then, you know, that's like 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. $5,000 back then for a blue collar family was, you know, like 25, 30,000 today. And because my parents had no money at all, they never gave me a dime ever. It was really like putting $100,000 in my head, you know, like that's how
Yeah.
big it was. So I was just curious. So I said, what gives? Like, what was the why? Why did this happen? You know, is there a science behind this? Is there something about letting go or the state I was in? So that started me on my journey, and I read thousands, thousands of those books, or maybe hundreds of everything from Forward Scovel to Neville Goddard and all these people talking about a similar thing, something about the state, the state, the state. And I was reading and learning and talking about it. And I realized I got addicted to understanding it and talking about it.
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't changing anything, I was just talking about it. And, you know, I was an actor at the time, wasn't really committed, wasn't really working hard. I bartended most of my life. I'd book a couple of things here and there, doing a certain thing in my mind, and something would happen, and I'd go, oh, well, that was interesting. What did I do there? And didn't think much of it, and then wasn't really consistent. And one day, I was about 37, something like that, and I was talking to a friend of mine behind the bar, talking about consciousness, because I really understood what I understood. I mean, the seminar I'm giving, the workshop I'm giving this Saturday, actually, I could have probably given the same workshop at that time, but I would say 80% of it, because the difference that made the difference was in what happened to me shortly after I had this conversation with them. I was talking about, you know, you got to be the consciousness of what you want and blah, blah, blah. And he rolled his eyes at me and he said, yeah, he's waiting for a gin and tonic, you know? and it wasn't so much ego, although a little bit of that was like embarrassment. Like, here I'm talking about this, like you can quit your life. And I'm almost 40 with no credits, no agent, no acting. I'm not acting for a living and I wanted to do that. Not really working hard as an actor, hit and miss as far as my abilities. And you know, I'm talking about this to him, and I got so sick and tired of hearing myself talk. And I realized I was trying to help others really, like understand what I understood, even though I wasn't really getting results, which is strange. I guess it's like trying to get people to believe the same thing I believed in order to feel, I don't know, like connected, you know, and not crazy. So that day I realized I had to make a decision. So I looked at him and I said to him, look at me in my eyes, look at me, look at me. I said, in 3 months, if I'm a working actor, it just means that I don't have to bartend anymore. It could be the same amount of money I am making bartending or more. But if I'm a working actor in 3 months, you come to me and ask me what I did, and I will teach you. And I went home and I decided I was going to do one of two things. Either realize that this is just a defense mechanism to deal with the fact that life is random, life sucks, and you have no ability to control your destiny, or it's the most powerful understanding that's actualized now in me, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life talking about it. So I'm either going to teach it and talk about it, or I'm never going to talk about it again. I was willing to never speak of it again. Which was interesting is because when I sat down to do the process, I realized how silly is this? How do you achieve anything unless you're really enveloped in the end result? Like no one just thinks about a skyscraper for a minute. You know what I mean? They have it's
Yeah.
experience in their minds first, and then it's on paper, and then it's on a, and then they build it, a little model, and then all these other actions and challenges have to happen to make the thing show up. So
Yes.
so I went home, and I have this voice that guided me when I was 19 through that
So
experience.
you're clairaudient.
No, it's more like just an intuitive voice. It sounds like a group, and it's more intuitive. It's not like I can't hear the words. I just know what they're saying. It's an intuitive, and but
Okay.
the only reason I say these voices is because they're clearly not how I think. So if you're a neurologist, call it the wise advocate, way up in the frontal lobe somewhere, right? There's some wisdom it feels like a group and is guiding me in way and asking me questions that I've never considered. And every time they've been right, every single time. And if it wasn't for this intuitive voice, I wouldn't be alive, to be honest with you. And I won't get into that right now. I don't think we have the time. But in this situation, this was like maybe the fourth time they showed up. So I sit down and I said, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to visualize myself as a working actor. So what does that mean, working actor? I don't know what script I'm going to be reading. Like that somebody's writing that. I'm going to visualize that. I mean, is it a TV show or a movie? Is it all right, I'm on a movie, I guess, and I'd fall asleep after 10 seconds, or I'd get something to eat, or I'd be on the phone, or I'd get really annoyed at the leaf blower outside, like all this placement. And so I was really frustrated. And that's when this intuitive voice came back and it said, choose one thing, which I found out later in NLP as NLP instructor. It's called evidence procedure, which is interesting that this is, all these voices guided me. Everything they did was, I found the principles in hypnosis, mindfulness, and biofeedback, and what's called open focus, and presence, like mindfulness, and so, and NLP. Like every one of these
It's almost
ideas.
like they were leading you into your mission, huh?
I guess so, because when I was going to write my own version of how to, change your life, and I started reading these things in NLP and hypnosis, and in mindfulness and biofeedback, and I was thinking, like someone beat me to it. I'll just kind of explain what they were saying in my own experience. So I'm sitting there, and the voice says, or the intuitive voice says, choose one thing to focus on. Now I realize they could have just been telling me, just focus on your breath, meaning put your flashlight in your brain on something rather than on the existing automation. They're like putting on something as choice rather than spinning and listening to
The whole story.
Exactly. The ACC saying this is important, that's important. Part of the brain that tells you what's important is like, oh, you're yelling at us, And so I said, one thing that, and said, yeah, that tells you you're there. Like, how will you know you're there? I was like, I don't know. And it's so cute. These voices are so cute. They said, well, if you don't know, we don't know.
Oh my God.
Yes, I hope. And then they said, you have to choose. Just choose for the sake of choosing.
So you could basically make anything up as a kind of like a milestone to know that you've made it.
Yes, exactly. Like if you're trying to surf, how do you know you're a surfer? Is it because you got up, or did you ride your first tiny wave, or did you become a person who can ride a 5 foot wave or
Or
6 foot
did you
wave.
walk out of the ocean and give someone a high five?
Yeah, like, how do you know? How do
Like
you
that
know?
little moment, like, oh, that once that moment shows up, I'll know that I'm a surfer now.
Exactly. Like I do have a certain amount of money in my bank account when I look at my bank statement. It's like until I look at it, I don't know how much money I have in my account. So there has to be a way in which you know. How do I know I'm married? Okay, so someone's in the other room saying, "We want to go on vacation this year." How do I know that? We know that something tells us we're married, that we're wealthy, we're this, we're that, we're healthy. The doctor's saying, "Yeah, you're good." Things like that. So how will I know? And so I chose one thing. I said, I guess if I was living in a trailer, kind of like showing up and working all day in a trailer. But that's not acting. It doesn't matter. Just how do you know you know? I said, okay, in the trailer. And at the time, I didn't have a good visual, I was able to visualize very well because I was using too much stress and trying in the visualization. Visualization is more of a passive thing. But I was trying to visualize and I couldn't. And they said, just kind of pretend you're there. How would you feel if you were there? And I'm good with my kinesthetic imagination because I used to do mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I imagined a bag, which you always have like a backpack if you're going somewhere for the whole day, maybe 16-hour days, right? So I can feel good weight, and that felt good. And I can feel myself walking up those metal steps and opening the metal handle in the trailer and closing it with that little latch, and then dropping my bag at a tiny little table with the chair and the trailer and doing that. And I said, okay, I did that, got it. That was cool. But now what? And they said, just do that.
So
Just
you visualized that like a bunch of times?
Yeah, and that's what I asked. I said, how long? They said, you said 20 minutes a day, 3 times a day. Do it 20 minutes a day, 3 times a day. So what I found was interesting is at least that's something that
Just that one moment over and over again for 20.
exactly, so I wouldn't be drifting. Like I said, I might as well have been focusing on my breath, putting my awareness. But since I was trying to create something, not only disengage from the automation, but to create a
Yeah.
new automation, that's hypnosis. I'm putting my awareness on an experience at the exclusion of everything else, and I'm being enveloped in it, right? And so I did that, and it was cool because that was easy to keep doing over and over again. And a couple of things started coming to my mind, like after about a week of this. The first thing was, wow, at least for 20 minutes a day, I'm fully enveloped in the decision I decide is my experience. That's cool because the brain and body doesn't really know the difference between
Hmm.
real experience and imagined experience. So that was really cool. And the second thing I realized is that one after a little while when I was going to work bartending, I'd be at the bar, but I wasn't thinking bartending. Like yesterday, I wasn't thinking like, oh, yesterday that guy came in and I tipped us $100, or so. Oh, no, Friday's going to be a good night, or Saturday's. It was more about like those thoughts and images. Like yesterday, I was at the trailer, and tomorrow I'll probably be in my trailer. That's
Ah,
what thought was. It started seeping into my brain's pattern of projection and memory, and that was really
so you're
cool.
projecting that onto your existing bartending job.
Yeah, but I wasn't doing it on purpose. I was just doing that for 20 minutes, 3 times a day. And then as I was bartending, my thoughts and feelings were like I was a working actor who happened to have bottles in my hand.
Huh.
Reality was only real as far as its data points of, sensorial experience of light, sound, kinesthetic experience. But there's no meaning and story around it. No
Yeah. Oh,
meaning.
the stories are, yeah.
No more than an actor coming behind the bar and picking up bottles, going, "Hey, this is cool. I know how to make drinks," but or an actor who's working all the time who's in a restroom. Like, oh, there's no camera there in a restroom. Like, why are they? It's because of who you feel, what you think, what you project, what you're feeling, what you're memorizing, and what you're familiar with. Because you let go of the tension around all the other
Yeah.
stories. You
Or
disengage.
you were creating the tension like, fuck, I can't believe I have to go do this bartending job again, dude. I want to be acting. So that would create a resistance.
Exactly. That's what the Buddhists, in my opinion, call aversion and attachment. I have an aversion to this, so I'm attached to that. So I disengage from this, more mindfulness, who cares? I'm accepting its right to be. And then I enveloped myself in a having feeling that
Yeah.
creates its own wanting. But it's a different kind of wanting. That's pure unadulterated desire. That starts to want what you already have rather than want
Yeah.
to get rid of this feeling you have.
Desire is very different than like like wanting. Like it's a different energy. Desire is kind of like a bring it to me energy, where wanting is kind of like a
Grasping.
yeah.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. It's like that. So yeah, and then after about 10 days of that, suddenly it started opening up. Like I hear a knock on the door. It's like, we're ready for you. And someone with a headset comes on, you know, Mr. Tabbanella, we're ready for you.
So it
And
just got more and more
yeah, it started building
intricate.
up. And I walked out of the trailer and I said, now what? You know, help me here. And they said, now have fun. I said, what's that mean? Experience what you choose to and want to. And I realized in that moment what I was really wanting, what it represented to me was I had a life of being shunned and like dismissed.
Yeah.
So I manipulated my environment to be like Joey Tabs in the bar, like, oh,
Isn't it funny how we do that?
yeah, it's that it's my defense. It was my, you know, persona to the pain I was feeling, as Jung would call
Yeah.
it. So I'm reaching for it. And so now I'm to have fun, and I realized what I was having fun with is feeling welcomed. Seeing the DP going like this with the camera, the photographer and the behind the camera, the grips giving me a knuckle, you know, high five, and the director, you know, going was really good. The other actor going, the producers looking in the monitor, watching me and going like, wow, that's really. And you see them walk away happy. And I realized what it really represented was a need to be welcomed, wanted, and important. And I
Mhm.
started doing that.
And that was attached to a core childhood wound, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it was
Yeah.
a whole, but yeah, there's always that root that started it of just feeling like dismissed and who you know, what do you do?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so that hurt and pain got shoved down, and then I used it as energy to be a workaholic, to be the best. So I was valuable and needed and appreciated, but not really enjoying it, just doing it to keep the owners happy and to keep the customers happy. But you know, like that old saying, be careful what you do, because if you do it well, they'll ask you to do it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
What you wow, you love doing, you know. So yeah, that took about 3 months of that, and one day it hit me that I was full circle back to the lottery, and I realized I was in the state of what I really wanted. And I realized when I really looked down at that state of being welcomed and working, it wasn't excitement; it was a fulfilling, complete, present feeling of not needing anything. Ironically,
Yes.
and literally that day, I was offered a series.
Wow.
3 months later, I was offered a series. And of course, the universe loves to test you. So it gave it to me and it took it away. And I went into this deep, almost suicidal depression because I finally had the thing that I wanted.
Oh,
And it was just a nighttime soap opera, but man, I wouldn't have to bartend. I could make believe on set all day and get paid for it and get paid, you know, well for it. You know? And they took it away, and I went to spiraling depression because right before I got that part, I got to that state and I went, oh, this is what I've been looking for whatever it was, 20 years. And I said, no body, no person, no event, no thing is going to take away this wholeness of my being. From here, I'll want. From here, I'll work hard. From here, I'll desire, but never at the expense of it. Nobody. And then they give me a part. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then the part gets taken away, and I go,
yeah. Was it because your energy switched?
well, what happened was the manifestation in front of me had to bring up the last vestige of trauma of being rejected in order to move past that energy and master.
Mm.
So what happened was they pulled it away, and in other words, you know that moment in childhood where you think you have something and then you're completely
Oh
just.
yeah, I just had that experience recently. It brought up all my childhood shit for sure.
What you were telling me before, right? That one you were telling me. Yeah.
No, no.
What was
Uh, no, this was a severance of like a sudden severance of like a relationship that I was like, I really thought was just like amazing. Right. And it was, but I wasn't expecting the severance. And I was like, whoa, that brought up like definitely the abandonment wound.
that's exactly what happens to master it.
Yeah. Oh, I grew, I mean, I grew more in the last 2 months than I have probably from any other relationship. And it was a short, like, connection. It was only 2 months, but the growth that I got from that was like profound.
Well, that's what happened. And so in my depression, my spiral, the voices came back and said, well, that was quick. I said, what was quick? And they're making, they said, no body, no thing,
They're
no
making fun of you.
event is going to take you away from this. And something shows up, it gets taken away, and you fall to pieces.
Uh-huh.
I stopped, I disengaged again, I let it pass, and I went deeper, I doubled down into more loving, applause, welcoming, until I felt the state, and I dropped the image and stayed in the state. They call me again. I get another part. I'm like, are you kidding me? Is this how easy it's been for after 20 years? Like trying to, and then the part that's taken away again. I go into depression again. And then I caught myself this time. I said, don't you have to remind me? And I doubled down again. They call me the third time. And I'm fine this time. I don't care. They don't even give me the part. I'm not even right for it. They don't give it to me, and I'm fine. I'm done, abdicating my sense of well-being and presence to an impermanent moment in time and space, moving like pixels through. I was done. So I just stayed present. I want it, but I'm not leaving this presence, this wholeness of being. And sure enough, they call it, once I proved. It's like I think about Moses with the Red Sea. Like what?
So was it like proving that you didn't need it, or that you kind of just surrendered?
Well, proving that I'm going to stay in my body no matter what photons are moving around out there.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in presence no matter what's happening out there. And the presence I'm feeling, by the way, has a tone to it that has an internal image of working on a set. So I know that the feeling is kind of bringing the future to me and me to it. So I'm just sitting there. Right. Joe Dispenza goes on and on about the same thing. It's just that's what I'm like, yeah, exactly that, which is the states pulling the future to you and you to it. And anyway, so I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden they call me and they just give me a part, and it is just like, hey,
okay,
exactly. And then 3 months later, after being on the set hundreds of times, one day I dropped my bag a certain way, and I went,
there it is.
oh. And then that started off where, because I'm a very skeptical kind of person, I understand confirmation bias, attention bias, and all these defense mechanisms to make sense out of the world. Mm-hmm. Very well, and so I'm very, very skeptical to that. Okay, so it's an anomaly. People work as actors. You know what I mean? That was just, you just made a story around it. I said, okay. But then I started doing it and doing it and doing it in that state. In other words, never wanting anything, just being, and then throwing something into my being and watching it bake into physical existence. And the last time I did it,
so almost like you already had it, so it doesn't matter what's going on here.
Exactly. In fact, I was never ever anywhere but here.
Mm-hmm. That's embodiment right there.
Oh, it was so cool. Because as soon as I felt antsy, I would think, okay, what do I want? That. What would it feel like I have it? Like that. I would drop into the state, drop the picture, and stay here and not really pay much attention to this, but be here.
Because that antsiness is disassociation, right?
What's that?
Isn't that antsiness, like when that comes up, like, oh, that's kind of like you're disassociating.
Yeah, you're running away from your sensations at the same time thinking that you're going to go somewhere else and get something to get rid of the
yeah.
So that's when I started realizing, but there was one time that was so specific. It wasn't even a huge thing, but the specificity of what I imprinted in my mind that showed up, and the way it showed up, it was, again, back to the lottery. It was like I was in a certain state, and had I not been in that state, it would have never shown up, because I never saw this person again saying these exact words that it imprinted, and I still was skeptical. So it took me like about 27 times, where the odds are probably, a million to one, some cases 50,000 to one, that I would say something and that would happen within, a couple of hours. It just kept happening over and over again. And that's when I realized, like, I was spending more time helping the extras meditate and do this than I was working on my part. And I started saying, maybe I should be doing this for a living, because I was so excited to share with them what I found. I was like, you gotta put yourself in this world. You can't look at me as something separate. You gotta go into my being, like as the star of the show. You gotta go into that and embody that, not want it, And I was like trying to this one guy, who knows if they even still did the meditation. For all I know, they were just impressed because the leader of the show wanted to hang out with them. You know what I mean? I'm thinking I'm changing their lives and giving them this gold, and you know, like
Well, hopefully they took heed, you know.
what's that?
Hopefully they listened. Some
Yeah, who
some
knows?
good stuff.
That brings up another story of why I was doing that, and I realized, oh, there's another layer that was driving even that behavior to try to release suffering so I wouldn't feel guilty thriving when other people weren't. Like all that stuff I realized took me out of the acting into that world, which is another layer of that, but I don't think we have time for that today anyway. But it's interesting how the dynamics keep going in these unconscious experiences that
I mean, we're
manifest.
not on a tight time crunch if you want to tell it.
Okay, well, so I started doing this for a living, right?
Mhm.
And I really go into depression because I don't know what I'm doing necessarily. I don't know how to get clients, blah, blah. And then the voices showed up again. What do you know for sure? And I was just like, yeah, but I don't know how to get clients. I don't know what I'm doing. How do you know this
Yeah.
for sure? What do you know for sure? I said, to have to be the state. Okay, do the same thing. I did the thing, and I started working, getting successful, learning what I was doing, getting better at it, and attracting business. And one day, this is how sneaky unconscious energy that's repressed is, because it has its
Oh
own
yeah.
behaviors, its own intentions. You know this. So I'm working with a client. I'm giving him this law. We're doing like a law of attraction, future stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, if this person only knew how powerful this is, what I'm teaching them, and they were actually to commit to it, believe me, and let go of everything else and trust in that, it would be the best thing in the world. I'm realizing I'm getting a little jealous because I remember when I was in it, I wasn't talking about it, wasn't helping people. I was absorbed in that meditation of the experience I wanted all day for months. I never talked about it that time, right? So I said, I'm gonna go somewhere to someone who knows this to the level I know it. Like I want to find someone that I trust. That didn't just do a seminar and do a class in it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
look, you can do it. Like I was doing my whole life before I realized and put it into practice. There are so many people, I'm sure, teaching it that are just excited about the idea because they got a parking spot or something, but they haven't really integrated it. So I wanted to make sure I was going to someone who knew this stuff. And of course, I found Joe Dispenza, right? And
Mhm.
his 4-day workshop, and he's saying everything. I understand open focus, less family. He's talking about space. I can't put heart rate variability I'm trained in. Talking about heart rate variability. He's talking about having the state. And what he's saying over and over again, which is I was so happy and I was looking around hoping people were going to get this because I understood it. He was saying the state of your future right now, that's guiding your future. So at any point, you go back into old emotional patterns. You're creating your old past back into your future. Do you get it? And he's begging them, like, you get it. Do you understand it? Good. So in the morning when you wake up, you're not going to go to your Facebook phone, right? You're not going to go to your this. You're going to stay here. And I was like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, preach it, brother. Like, preach it. And he goes, now we're going to do meditation. Oh, great. And we do this 20-minute meditation. Everyone's crying. I'm crying. My future self is here. And they see this place of ecstasy. And he goes, okay, let's take a 20-minute break. And I go, I'm not taking a break. This is 4 days of this. I know what this does if you just stay here. It doesn't have to create anything. It's just ecstasy, period. And then it winds up creating everything I always thought I wanted. And then when it shows
And
up,
give yourself the state that's going to that thing you want is going to give you. You give that to yourself first.
you let that create its own like vibration, right? So I get up. I can get a cup of coffee in this state. I get up. This is my favorite story to tell because this is how insidious it is, or how hidden. I see these two women get up. Everyone's getting up off their chairs. There's two women walk past me, and they got tears coming down their eyes. They just did the meditation, and they go. One woman turns to the other. Wasn't that beautiful? Yeah, very beautiful. Oh, that was beautiful. Did you get a room with a view? She's like, yeah, by the lake. They said I had a room with a view by the lake, but I have a palm tree blocking the lake. It's real. I waited at the bar for 40 minutes for a cheeseburger. I was at the restaurant over there waiting 10 minutes for a drink. You would think that they would hire people here when 400 people at a seminar. You'd think they would have, yeah. And I'm like, am I being punked right now? Like, did you hear him? Didn't you just see how you went from your future self to your addictive complaining self?
Wow.
And then you're going to create that, look for that, and manifest that. 10 seconds after that, or 5 seconds, hey Joe, some guy I met, how you doing? How was your meditation? I said, oh, it's great. I still got tears running down my face. He goes, you know what I noticed? I said, what? He goes, no, this is high here. Like I said hello to 3 people and they don't seem to look at you and be warm. You think in a place like this, people be warm. And I'm like, am I being punked?
You're like, why are you creating that?
I'm like, he was screaming at you for 4 hours. He was giving you examples, analogies, metaphors, science, logic, and reason to live like this. And 10 seconds after he told you, 10 seconds, like, don't leave it, you left it. And I realized in that moment, holy cow, I was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I realized that took me out of acting and this work because I couldn't believe I was addicted to this incredulous feeling I have about this magic in the world, and there are people who are teaching it, and it's there, and you even know it, and you don't do it, and yet that's what and I realized that's what happened. These unprocessed, unaccepted experiences as a kid, where my sister was depressed, or didn't really do. I had a twin sister. She died at 26, and she seemed like she didn't have a lot going on with her life. And so when I see that energy, I want to fix that. Then the angry people, when I was a kid, like people want to kill you in Brooklyn for no reason. So I don't want people to be too jealous or too upset with my happiness. So I want to teach them that they can do it too. And then the third one was, being valuable, because in the set, you're not valuable. You're doing your job, and then you're kind of alone. You're not like helping someone. And I realized when I was doing those meditations, they were like, wow, that was amazing. Like, oh, thank you for helping me. And I realized all those 3 things were just defense mechanisms to unprocess hurt, fear, and sadness and shame. And that's all they were. And that's what got me into this business. So one could say, is that what you're still doing? No. And I realized that when I was in this, I started releasing those charges so I can show up.
How did you start to release those and unwind from those patterns?
Yeah. How or what?
How?
Oh, well, by doing the work, by doing the work, first recognizing it, and recognizing it and discharging the emotion through a kind of a combination of dissociation, NLP, what's called open focus, mindfulness, and pendulation through the energy of the emotion until it's discharged, and then replace it with the end result I would like, everyone being happy.
Yeah, I do that pendulation with emotions.
That's key.
Yeah. Like you can mix emotions with like you can mix like sadness with pleasure, and you can do like pendulation like that. That's kind of like a tantric exercise.
Yeah, that's they do in trauma work, and it's all very similar, no matter how you slice it. In NLP, we call it collapsing an anchor. In brain spotting, we call it like a resourceful spot and an unresourceful spot, with a neurobiological attunement also as a safety anchor or a resource state. But everything is about accepting, giving space, the uncomfortable emotion, and either discharging it through mindfulness, love, and spaciousness and mindfulness, or bringing in another feeling in until it dissolves that feeling, or stepping out and changing the scene and reframing it and receiving a greater image. It's all the same thing in different packages, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's like, it can get confusing because you're like, oh, I've got to learn NLP and I've got to learn this, and I've got to know all this stuff. And then you start to notice it's also like similar.
It seems like there's only 2 simple principles in all kind of change work. Even in trauma, it's on a continuum, obviously, because the trauma is more like fragmented parts rather than just encapsulated little trauma bubbles, so it's just like fragmentation, but it's all about integration, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're doing two things, and they're both under the heading on mindfulness. So the hypnosis part of mindfulness is the absorption of something with all five senses at the exclusion of everything else, right? That's when we do the mindfulness where you're eating a strawberry, being very present to the thing, a new experience, and that flavors your brain, your body, your autonomic nervous system registers it, and then starts to become it, and then becomes a habit and a principle, and then it creates more of it. That's what it does. It starts looking for more of that experience, and it becomes who you now are. But the other part of the mindfulness is about discharging the emotions we said no to by being present with them without judgment, right? That's the biofeedback part. That's the open focus part. That's the pendulation part. That's the acceptance part. That's the reframe part. That's the tapping. It's about discharging the emotions that got stuck with an event we never learned to be comfortable with. And
That's what breath work does too, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I found that to be a really powerful modality. I love taking my clients through transformational breath work. I just started doing that.
What kind of breath work?
So, I mean, I would say it's holotropic, but it's not, because holotropic is like specifically like 3 hours. So this will be like an hour, and I play specific music and then trigger them into like releasing the emotions.
Cool.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing to witness, and I'm just like so honored to like hold space for someone in that process, because it's just kind of like and I do it. I go to these breathwork journeys, and it's just so amazingly healing. It's like something like ayahuasca without the drug, but it's you and your breath. That's it.
Do you do it in groups or individually?
Tonight I went to one and we did it in groups, but what I'm doing with my clients right now, I'm doing a group on Sunday, but I just do it one-on-one for now with my own clients. But yeah, like the group energy makes it really intense. So I do eventually want to do more groups. But when I attend it myself, like sometimes I'll just kind of like listen to headphones and do my own journey in bed, which is still very intense. I mean, I'll still like release like a lot of emotions, crying, screaming, laughing, like, and you don't know what's going to come up. You know, like you can have your little story like, oh, I'm going to go in and I'm going to work on this. No, you don't know.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that happened at the second Joe Dispenza workshop where we're doing it, his exercise, which is kind of basically rising, lifting it, Kundalini energy up the spine, right? So
Yeah.
we're breathing and breathing and breathing and breathing, and he said something like, if you want to meet the divine, you have to meet it halfway, right? And I said to myself in that moment, I'm ready to die to connect. And suddenly I felt this spiral and this spinning, this energetic trauma, I guess, coming out of my cells, as the energy was increasing. And suddenly my backstory, 6 months before this, or 4 months before this moment, I was kind of feeling lonely and really disconnected from the world. And I just said, like, I want to go back home, wherever that is, right? I want to just go back home. And those voices said, don't worry, we'll be getting together soon. And so I thought, wow, I might be leaving the planet at this time, right? And I said, well, maybe something's going to happen, because I had cancer at one time, and maybe the cancer is coming back. I don't know if that was after or before. It was after, right? So I thought maybe cancer is going to come back or something. Okay, so now cut to 4 months later, I'm doing this, I'm getting dizzy, and all of a sudden my heart exploded.
Oh, you had a heart center awakening, huh?
Yeah, speaking of
Uh-huh.
I, my heart exploded, and I actually got to finally meet these beings, this intuitive spiritual world. Now, I understand for you skeptics out there, that's why my mind's,
No, I had a heart center awakening a couple months ago. It was yeah, I'm no longer skeptical to that at all.
It was so profound. There's these four giant crystal, like in Superman, the original Superman, all those giant crystals, like these crystal light. looked like these four giant crystal light beings looking down, and I knew who they were. They were the you know the symbolic representation of this intuition, this voice, these voices. And one of these crystals were like an offshoot of these three crystals. So it was like the baby, but it was an offshoot of consciousness, right? And to like with me, with all my knowledge about, I felt like a baby compared to the smaller crystal,
Mhm.
and it was looking at me, pointing to its parents, its higher vibrant, and saying, "Look, mommy, he's waking up." So
Oh
I
my
was a
God.
baby waking up to this greater field of awareness, right? I cried for hours. They had to lift me up. People were coming up to me. They were worried, their own projections and stuff. Do you want me to do tapping? I can do tapping. Like, get away from me.
You're like, I'm in bliss.
Right now. Are you kidding me? Like tapping? You want me to get rid of this? You know? And I am crying like a baby for hours. Like they had to put me like in the hotel in the hallway, and I just cried, and I couldn't believe how much love was exploding out of my heart. And that's when I realized, oh, that's what you meant. Oh, you'll be seeing me soon. And that day, and they're laughing right now. As every time I tell this story, they just laugh because they say do whatever you want. But I got the sense that now they, instead of just talking and guiding me, they can work through my hands. And I've
Mm-hmm.
always been drawing the hand, like I healed a tree when I was 19 by just putting energy, and this tree came to life. And I read these books on, I don't know if you know William Benson is the energy cure. And so I'm drawn to those books, but I don't do it. And they keep laughing. They say, you know, you could be good at it. I know, I don't want to be an energy guy
What do you
here.
think is stopping you from doing it?
I don't know.
I saw that you had it. Like as soon as I like took one of your first classes, I saw that you had that.
Yeah, I can feel it. I can feel when I do it to people. I did just like you know, when I do it with my friends and then we're healing something, it works. You know, like I put my hand there, not works, but there's some kind of effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know.
It's almost like it's coming through you. It's not Joe Tabbanella doing this. It's
no,
you're just the conduit.
yeah. If I were to do it, that's exactly what it would be. That's what they're saying. Like, just like you get out of the way, you can hear us, our wisdom, and you can get out of the way. You get out of the way to this, and so
And because you've cleared yourself so
exactly,
much.
exactly. You just answered my question. The question I gave them was, well, then everyone could just get out of the way. So no, the clearing that you did with this is going to
Mhm.
let more energy out than some would,
And has that been happening in more and more in layers? Like you had the one awakening, but now do you have like more like sometimes smaller awakenings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go through one now that is deep trauma coming to the surface that I didn't know was there until recently. And so now I'm like, it feels like, I don't want to say the last one, I don't want to jinx myself, but it feels like last vestige of karmic baggage energetically that needs to be transmuted. That's what it feels like. Um,
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it like right, you know, even right now as you speak, and I'm aware of it. I go psh, psh, going into it, going into it. So it's dissolving in a much more gentle way than this other event I had to dissolve. I was shaking, literally shaking, screaming and shaking like an exorcism for 6 hours.
Wow.
Maybe eight, but sometimes I think the eight is the exaggeration factor to this. But it was definitely 6 hours. It's shaking on the floor like a exorcism, and then it popped out of my neck, and that's why I had cancer from it. And like pearls being pulled out of my neck, and the words "I'm a piece of shit" came flying out, and I was free. Like the
Wow.
stimulus
And
that
this
I've
is
been getting.
all just energy. This isn't even like plant medicines or anything.
This is just radical acceptance and awareness and
Sounds
space
like Kundalini energy too.
merging with whatever's there rather than being afraid of it, saying yes to it, going through hell, meeting the devil, having lunch, and then coming back and being a different person, because I was able to go there because of an early event that made me realize, okay, this is how it works. It's feeling the emotion, and it's not just feeling, merging with it until it's integrated back into the system. And I think spiritually or philosophically, you get, or even physically, it gets discharged back into the field from whence it came. So I think that's our job, is to discharge shadow self. Anything that has not been looked at as intolerable, that's separate from us, is separate from presence. Anything that's separate from presence could be it has to be anti-presence, and that separation from things. And that means it has
and takes the energy to keep that like separate from us, because that's something we don't accept. So it's like separate from us. But in order to say, okay, this happened, I accept it, and in order to diffuse it, you have to bring it in and say, okay, this is okay, this is here. But if you're not even willing to like look at it, it's not going to go anywhere. It's gonna just rear its ugly head and get louder.
And it will take over, and that's
everything.
Whatever is, like the greater its awareness out of your, from your being, basically, the greater you're suppressed or repressed or separated from it,
oh yeah,
it's gonna do to you.
Dude, yeah, that's what I was just telling you about, the ayahuasca experience I just had. Like, even though it was so far from my awareness, like I had no, like it wasn't even like, I mean, I've been having a lot of like repressed childhood memories come up lately, but this one was just like, it wasn't like I remembered it and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. It came to, and I was like, holy shit, that happened. So it was a completely different energy. Like it was completely suppressed. Like it was never, almost like never a memory.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa.
Those parts have their own adaptation, their own coping experiences, and they like the.
And then once you see it, it loses its power completely. All the stories around it all die. Another thing, since so many people are like having these awakenings, do you notice that? So many people are awakening right now. And another thing that I heard in the ceremony was that the second coming of Christ that everybody talks about is here. This is it. And it's an internal thing, the eternal awakening of the Christ consciousness in each and every one of us. We are it.
That's what Edgar Cayce said. In these times, talking about now, you know who Edgar Cayce was?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So he said in these times, he's talking about now after
2012.
2012 and 2000. He said in these times, we will know God directly.
Yes.
Directly. And it's pretty profound. And again, I have that part of my brain that says, really, maybe we're just being manipulated into this.
No, I don't think so.
To deny that, it's hard to deny that just like every human goes through their dark night of the soul, it's like forced into like facing their dragon, right? We as the whole earth and the human condition is going through at the same time. So it's like the whole human condition is going through its dark night of the soul.
Yes.
It's happening. I have to say, you're right.
I love it. I mean, we can have our little issues and our little problems that just get us in that like lower vibrational state. And then all of a sudden you think, yeah, but look what's happening, and we can get sucked into these fear portals that they're trying to do, like on the news, like fear this, put your energy right here. And if you know about energy, we're all putting our energy with the Will Smith slap or Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, right? We're all putting our energy right there. And if somebody wanted to go feed on energy, they know right where to go. It's like, that's a little bit conspiracy theory, but I truly believe that it's energy harvesting. And there are forces like, yes, we're all awakening to Christ consciousness, but yeah, like, just like there's light and darkness. So there's forces that don't want that to happen.
Yeah, it's like that movie. It's a cartoon for kids where they Fear Incorporated or something.
Oh, I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Kids, terrify kids to suck their energy and use it to fuel their world, the monsters world.
Holy shit, I gotta look that up and watch it.
right? What's the word? They're not seeding. I forget what the term is. Where they're
Harvesting?
no, where they're kind of letting us know what they're doing.
Oh, right, right. It's
Uh,
like in plain sight, but there's a word.
yeah, yeah, and that's an example of that.
That's so fun.
Example of that, like needing to keep people afraid. But from even in the philosophical sense, you don't have to get so woo-woo. You don't have to even get conspiratorial about it. But even in a philosophical way, when I let go of fear, and all fear was a fight-flight response that is only used for running or fighting. And if I can't run or fight, why am I afraid of my own adrenaline? It needs to leave. It does. I don't need.
Yeah.
Energy needs to go out of the autonomic nervous system and up into the frontal lobes as far as creativity or thinking or acceptance. But we don't need this energy. Even when it is fight flight, it's power. Once it goes into the arms or legs for fighting, it's no longer an alarm. It's power. It's exhilarating. If you ever like being like running from a guy with a gun as a kid, like when you jump over a fence that's taller than you, the power and the adrenaline is exciting.
Wow. Yeah.
So you don't like so the fear is not even the adrenaline, it's the fear of the adrenaline and the power of in that body. So that's the bizarre thing about this is anytime, again philosophically think about it this way, let's say we are connected to everything. It's a little woo-woo, but let's say we're connected to everything, which we are, right? If I want something that I can't see, my eyes can't see, and I don't know how to get there, then I have to connect to the whole gestalt in order to let a bigger part of me, higher power, higher self, God, spirit, whatever you get me there. Because I don't know what that lottery number is. I don't know where that business partner is. I don't, how do I know, right? So part of me has to know. So in order to connect to that part, I have to connect to the moment. To connect to the moment, I have to be present. To connect to presence, I have to let go of a fight-flight response trying to get me out of this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Stay in that moment. It's like Moses with the Romans coming, right? To get the sea in front of you. You're just like, all right, I'm going to die, but at least I'm calm and comfortable while I'm dying. And then the sea opens up. Or, okay, I didn't get the part. Great. At least I'm calm and comfortable and I didn't get the part. And then they give you the part. When you let go in a relationship, okay, they didn't want me. At least I'm calm and comfortable and it sucks that I'm alone. And then the person calls back or another person shows up or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's something about letting the body and but more something about letting presence of having what you want move your body into action as opposed to your brain's way of doing things, which is knowing what it already knows and trying to do the same thing it knew. so if you don't,
Brain can be like action based on fear or action based on like past, like they happened this way in the past, it happened this way in the past. But if your action is, I love that analogy. If the action is, I have this now and I'm just going to move like I already have it.
yeah, and having it is really about what I found years later. Having it is really about letting go of the attachment and energy around all the emotions of not having it and all the data and even having it. And
that one's a tricky one.
Well, once you get that, then it becomes a piece of cake because that's what got me there. Is when I stayed in the state, I refused to want it because I had the state. Then the state always put me in a situation, made me feel like walking that way, win the lottery. I felt like walking that way. I met the guy who said these words that I put in my head. I felt like walking that way. I met someone else who said this to me that I was imprinted in my mind. I walked that way. They gave me another series. They wanted me to be, and it's going to shoot November, December, January, 2 weeks on the holidays. And that showed up. And then I wanted to triple my income because I needed it. And that did happen. But every single time, I got to the state of having basically the lack of fear, but a having feeling of, let's just say, a certain tone in my body of the pattern I wanted. And that's why you don't have to hold on to the image because the image is synonymous with the feeling.
Yeah.
That's why
the image is really just to get the feeling, right?
Yes, exactly, because they're synonymous. They're just confused. Think about it.
You can't have just the image. You have to have the feeling.
Exactly. Well, it depends. If you just have the image, what is the feeling of that image? If the feeling is wanting, then that's the image. You have an image of wanting something, that thing. If the
So
image,
it'll always be here and you'll always have the energy of wanting. But if you
yeah,
have it and you just bring it in, yeah. I love
if you have, if you visualize the image and you have a three-dimensional sensorial experience of that image, right? And you're feeling anxious, you're not really visualizing the image. You're visualizing the thing you don't want and not liking the thing you don't want and feeling the emotions of the thing you don't want. That's processing the thing you don't want.
or that
And
you want it and that now is not okay because you don't have it.
exactly. And the emotions you're feeling are supposed to pass through, not become stagnant. They're supposed to pass through this happy feeling so you can still not have it here outside and still want it outside, but you have to have it inside. You
Yes.
have it inside.
Wow. That's so profound.
And it's really weird because we're trained the opposite way because we get a lot done the opposite way, which is I don't like how I feel. I don't like my house. I don't like my money.
Change it, right.
And we work hard to change it and we get successful. But who cares if you get it and you're terrified of losing it? Then you're just a control freak trying to control matter and keep an impermanent moment from being,
Yes.
trying to make it permanent. And that's why we either get terrified once we get it, or we lose it, or we try to hold on to it, or then we hurt people or lie to people to keep it, or we don't give a shit about it because we're just trying to change a bunch of electrons around in order to be comfortable. That's ridiculous. You know.
Oh man. Yeah. This is all stuff that you talk about in your law of attraction workshop, right?
Yeah, I'm doing it Saturday at American Hypnosis Association.
So you don't have to go to HMI in order to do that
No,
workshop, right?
no, you can just sign up at the I guess you go to hypnosis.edu and you look for AHA, American Hypnosis Association, and then it says calendar of events, and then you can log on there. I think.
And I can catch the pay-per-view later, right? Because I'm working Saturday.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah, a lot of questions come up, But the
Yeah.
pay-per-view now has a lot of questions in it because we actually used the last Zoom we did with the pay-per-view. So there's a lot of questions and meditations but it's really it's so simple and it's more about simplicity and practice rather than complexity and doing it right.
Yeah. And really, like, it's kind of about embodiment.
Yeah.
I heard a quote the other day, embodiment is the new mindset.
Well, I love that, but you know what I love even more? Something you said would normally sound so new agey and hippie, right? And be one of those things that like those platitudes that are annoying, and yet it's probably the most accurate platitude or a comment one could make, which is holding a space, right?
Hmm.
Like it's so like I'm gonna hold a space for you, right? But it's so dead on what we're doing when
Yeah.
we're keeping a container, we're holding a container of non-reactivity
Safety.
while they're reacting. Yes, it's such a beautiful term, hold the space.
Such an honor to be able to do that, because I mean, yeah, like I don't even like to call myself a healer. Like they are the healer. The client is their own healer. I just
Anyone who calls themselves a healer, you should run.
right.
Who calls themselves a healer, you should run for the hills.
Yeah. Oh man, my friend was telling me when I told her that I was doing ayahuasca down here, she's like, wait, you're not going to that place in Orlando, are you? And I was like, no. She's like, that guy was at some kind of party talking about, I've healed thousands and thousands of people. Like, first of all, the medicine did that. So yeah, I mean, when you have a mission where a lot of people are helped by that mission, you really have to keep your ego in check.
Yeah, I think someone who's saying that probably poisoned the energy of that room because
I think so. Yeah, she was like, it was just so gross because first of all, the medicine and the person taking the medicine. That's all it's between.
Yeah, that's polluting that. That's using
Yeah.
people to make themselves feel better, and
It's
that's
exploiting the medicine.
it's hard not to do that when you're helping people, and you feel like wow, you went to 1,000 people and I helped you. But it's so important, I think, in any kind of, whether you're licensed, you know, therapist or hypnotherapist or coach or ayahuasca facilitator. I think it's the most important thing we can do is to not use our clients to ameliorate our feelings of lack of value or importance.
Yes.
It's so important. It's
And
difficult
it's
to.
a practice, especially if you have a lot of wounds around that. Not being enough, not being chosen. And then you see people like, wow, the impact you've had on me is profound. You got to just,
Yeah,
you can't really
yeah.
bring that in too much. And you have to remember, always go back to your heart.
At HMI, we used to say, "Don't take credit for the healing.
Yeah.
You change, because then you got to take credit for the failures."
But I tend to take more credit for the failures.
Yeah.
Like if something's wrong, I'm like, shit, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I steer this client in the wrong direction? Like I'm learning to unwind that now.
That's a process.
Yeah.
And you know what I found? Like one day I was going to work. I work at a rehab. I work at two rehabs, and I was going to one of them, and I had a little dread. Like I didn't want to go there. I didn't know who was going to be there. New people coming in. Was it going to be a lot of work, or people going to be in suffering? And I don't want to see another person suffering the way I just can't handle. Blah blah blah. And those voices showed up, and they said, "What's going on?" I said, "I don't know. I don't feel like going to work." "Well, what do you feel like?" "I don't know." "Well, I just miss acting." And he said, "Like when you're on a set and you're playing and and flow." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why can't you feel like that right now?" And he went,
Hmm.
I said, "I guess I could, but I can't walk in that state. Why not?" And I realized unconsciously, I was already being unconsciously, energetically being triggered with people in pain, triggering my,
I can't be too happy in front of people with pain, right?
or just even stuff that means that now I got to work hard to get you to not being in pain anymore. And so that's what I was feeling. So I stopped.
Mhm.
I stopped taking responsibility. I let go, and I said, "What would it feel like if I just showed up like this and I wasn't in a stress response to do something, and I didn't was
Yes.
fighting my own projection of what I was feeling and thinking they were feeling, and then working hard to get them to feel good, and then feel relieved because they feel
And
good."
then picturing like, oh, Joe didn't really help me today. He didn't do shit. That session didn't really do it. Yeah, all the little.
Exactly. That's the unconscious part, right? What was conscious was like, "Oh, I got to get going. I got to help this person. What am I going to do?" Right. So I just showed up. I got to the state of like as if I was on a set, just having fun and making believe and laughing, and I just showed up like this. I didn't leave this presence. I didn't tense my muscles. I didn't hold my breath. And I said to myself, if I can't help them like this, then I don't want to help them, nor am I able to help them. Because this presence that helps, not my fear and then a technique and then they feel good.
Yes. Oh my God.
It might be more of a band-aid, I think, energetically, if you're doing that. So I just showed up. I still did this very similar things I would have not done, but it was just as if I wasn't working, as if I was comfortable in my skin and having fun and being present and listening. And so I think I don't have evidence because the other way was getting a lot of feedback too, but I think that energetically I helped them more doing that. Just like kind of.
And feels better for you too.
Exactly.
So it's like a win-win. So if you're coming in there with that energy, even if you use the same techniques, that energy alone and that presence that you're bringing, I mean, presence is a gift, as trite as that sounds. It really is. And you're full, like, not like, oh, I gotta help this, if I don't, like, your God complex as a practitioner isn't helping.
And that's the interesting thing, is because when you drop into presence, then presence gets to help, and presence is connected to everything and all things and is under everything. And so that awareness, that field of awareness, that field of presence, right? It knows the intention because you already got there and it feels good. And so it knows how to experience what it's experiencing and through feedback, and knowing how to adjust to keep going until it gets there. And all we have to do is enjoy the ride.
Uh-huh.
Something else is healing, not my brain that's so
Yeah,
limited.
the brain's gonna be like, oh yeah, but if you're just sitting here, you're gonna forget the resources. You're not gonna remember this. You gotta write this down. You gotta no.
Yeah, exactly. You got your foot, right, more than just your foot through the door of this, let's just say through the veil. Yeah, in it, in the world, but not of it, said the Avatar.
Yes. It's crazy because I feel like going to HMI in a way was almost like, I've been on the healing journey for years, like since 2017. I was a heroin addict prior to that. And I my stepdaughter at the time, I actually got to see myself through her eyes, and that's what showed me I was worth loving. So then I started healing.
Wow.
But yeah,
Healing. What does that mean? I started healing.
I started just really focusing on myself and how I've abandoned myself, and I had no clue what self-worth even was. Like, I didn't know I didn't have it.
Right.
Started unwinding toxic patterns that I've had for a really long time. Stopped using substances as a crutch. I mean, there were just layers and layers and layers and layers of it. But really, like, going to HMI was like a big initiation for that too.
And can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, of course. I'm an open book.
What's with the men have feelings too? Why did you decide to do a podcast on men have feelings too? What inspired that?
Um, a couple of different things. So I used to be an exotic dancer, and I've noticed that I like my presence somehow would like just invite men to really open up emotionally. So in that job, like, I got to see like the emotional side of some men that they wouldn't share with like their wives, their bosses, their friends.
What do you mean by that? Their emotions, because
Their deepest kind of desires, their deepest hurts that they didn't feel comfortable expressing to anybody. They didn't feel like.
So while you were dancing, they would just be telling you about their hurts.
So it wouldn't be why, like, no, I would get into conversation. Like, of course, I would do like the stage thing, but then like we would, instead of like, in the private dance room, instead of dancing, I would get them like deep into these conversations, and they would really open up, and like they would have emotions. They would cry sometimes, and they felt, a lot of times they just felt so unseen by everyone in their life.
Wow. Is
You
that a book?
know?
A book on this? This would be a cool book.
I thought about it, and I just see how this narrative of like, men are shit, men, we don't need men, this and this, and just kind of like just how men have become the enemy. But I really believe that from a very young age, men have been emotionally subjugated. Oh, man up, just kind of like, stuff your emotions down and just show up and work or whatever. So then like they get berated for expressing their emotions when they're little boys. And this isn't everybody, but this is kind of like the patriarchal kind of narrative. And then when they grow up and get into relationships and can't really express their emotions deeply, they also get berated for that.
It's funny. I just did I got back into acting for fun, and just did a scene that I wrote and produced, and we got a director to shoot it about that, about my wife is wanting me to be more emotional, and I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean emotional? And it becomes a very funny scene, and I'll send it to you when it's out.
Yeah, please do.
And it's very, very funny. It's a very, very so funny. But it's about that. I want you to be emotional, and then when they're finally emotional, it's like, oh, you look weak. What are you doing?
Right. And I feel like that's why maybe like a lot of men, they don't feel safe, like especially like a lot of like really successful like CEOs, you know. I feel like the narrative is actually changing a little bit now. I hope, you know, but I mean, the suicide rate for men is so much higher. The depression is just, it's just, I just think, I just, I just love men. And I love like honoring the, I guess you can say the feminine in men, like the emotional side. And because it's such a big, beautiful thing. And when men are able to express themselves in a way that's so healing for them and other men around them. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
someone on our side.
Yeah, there's a lot of women that are actually on the side of like, you know, men's rights advocacy. And because there's a lot of people like, oh, you know, women, you guys are goddesses, this, women are just so beautiful, women are always right, you know, like you can go to, you can be pissed off at a man and then get him alone for a little while and then blame him for something. And yes, men do a lot of shitty things too, but you know, there's not a lot of people out there telling men that they're gods. So a lot of times when they get into a relationship, they start to feel unworthy. I mean, there's just so much. There's so much. And like, it's funny that you asked me that question because I've never really put it into like a concise box. It's just all these random like little thoughts that I've had and feelings and experiences. That it just felt so true to do this. Like I don't make any money on it or anything.
It's interesting because it's so fascinating about this. As a guy, a bunch of guys go to a place and see exotic dancers, right? They're going to get turned on, or to, you know, in some cases, a sense of power that, oh, I get to see you, and I'm not normally allowed to see this, so now I get to see it, and I get to tell you what to do, or um, and then having someone like you be part of that environment that would allow not only that part of them to be expressed that's repressed, but then because of your care and kindness for them to create that space, and suddenly they're also expressing their emotions, right?
Yeah. I mean,
And
some of the things they've revealed,
what
like
kind
I didn't see it at the time, but it's such a beautiful like
without mentioning
experience.
names, could you share the one thing that really impacted you, like something that was shared?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to pick one, but I'll pick one. He had a child who was 4 years old and she couldn't talk. She was autistic. So he held himself for his wife because his wife needed the emotional support. You know, he owned a company, but he was never given that emotion. He was never allowed to fall apart about having a daughter that never got to speak. And you know, I gave him the space to fall apart, and that's exactly what he did. Like, and he just never, you would think that like if a husband and wife are going through that, that they would be able to go through that together. But he was just supporting her and the daughter, and he just felt like he had to hold up the whole world and he couldn't crumble in front of anybody.
Mm. And that's the confusion, right? There's so are we done? We're done, right? In time, right?
I don't have like a time limit.
because there's a lot of ambiguity in all this. I'll tell you what I mean by this is first we talk about emotions, and then like, are we talking like what I find is when a woman wants a man to be quote unquote emotional, emotions is just the autonomic nervous system and the whole hormonal response, right? What they usually are saying is they want a man to be a little bit more like connected and
Connected, vulnerable.
right and honest to their experience. They would quote
Hmm.
feeling about the experience, right? Emotions themselves are a dysregulated experience that if you have what's called, if you're able to keep within the window of tolerance of emotions because you've learned to be comfortable in the uncomfortable emotions, then you could be dealing with life and not crumbling apart and yet have all these emotions because they don't overwhelm you and they're not too much that you have to suppress them and pretend they're not there. And
Yes.
that balance of being like emotional, does people have this tendency to think, especially men, because they suppress it so much, they have a tendency to think, and rightfully so, because if it's that suppressed, it will. They have a tendency to think that the emotion itself is so overwhelming, they're going to fall apart, not be able to do anything, and quiver like a baby. And it's not the emotion itself; it's the fear of the emotion, it's the suppression of the emotion, and it's the inability to self-regulate and integrate the emotions. So it's
Hmm.
so the bottom the balance there is to be able to be crying with your wife who's dealing with this daughter and saying, yeah, I know it's really hard, I got you, honey, we're going to get through this, and cry. And but because they're so afraid of the emotion, they've suppressed it, that they don't have any tolerance for it, and so it has to be suppressed. So if they dare to let that those floodgates open,
Oh, it's a flood. Yeah, it's a floodgate.
then
Exactly.
it is too dysregulated to cope, and you do fall apart. That's the irony in the whole thing. It's not the emotion; it's the inability to regulate and integrate them while they're happening, so you can deal
Hmm.
with the problem at hand and accept what you need to accept that you can't control, and then take action in what you can control, and then learn what you can learn, so you can move on.
Yeah, and it
But
wasn't only sadness, it was anger, it was grief, it was all these things that he wasn't expressing.
and you're saying, like in that back room there, he's just crying to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was this was yeah, he was crying. This happened on two occasions. He was like my regular client, but yeah.
Before that, was he lusting after you when you were dancing at first?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I kind of had my own way of keeping that energy in my control,
Ah, yeah.
you know? Like I would let them lust a little bit, but then I would kind of like reel it in and get into their heads.
Got it. Got
Yeah.
it. That's interesting. So, because that makes for a really great story or a scene in my head, a movie, where it's just such a profound thing because you know what objectively is he? I don't never went. I think I went to a not strip club, exotic dancing bar once when I was younger, and I didn't want to be there because I didn't feel like anyone wanted to be there, and I felt like I was
Yeah.
like be in denial to enjoy the experience. It just was weird for me. And my friends that were there, I just didn't understand like how they like that. You know, I was like, that does that unless that person really loved
There's
doing it.
people who would go there every night.
Yeah, it's like I understand buying
A
into
lot
it.
of lonely people.
Yeah, I understand buying into a fantasy with someone you know and you're in love with, and they're like because they want to engage with that and you're intimate.
Right.
But to engage in a fantasy with someone you don't know there, and you know they're engaging in a fantasy for you, and they wouldn't normally want to do that under other circumstance. It feels always felt it felt like fake. Yeah, it felt
Yeah,
like
I wouldn't want that.
and so I don't know what the point was that oh yeah. So objectively, when you see those guys at the they go into a bar and out of there, right? You see them through a certain filter and judgment sometimes, or you, I'll just speak for me, like we could see people through a certain judgment or a filter or generalization about who they are. And here is the same guy crying to you like, like a baby
Mhm.
about, I mean, that's really that juxtaposition of,
Yeah, they were like a lot of the girls did kind of dehumanize them a little bit just for their own safety. But my mechanism of like control, and I'll even be honest, manipulation, was, I didn't want to have to use my sexuality and my body so much. So I would be able to kind of like see into what they were holding and bring that out.
Wow. Is there any, is that driven by your nature and your soul and your purpose and meaning only, or is there some kind of codependency there wanting to make them like feel their pain and then therefore wanting to fix them somehow?
So back then, that was like totally in my like lower state. I think it was just kind of like, now seeing that is it's just a soul thing.
Yeah.
It's totally like it's no codependency. Like I don't feel like I need to fix anybody. Um, but then it was a manipulation tactic. So they couldn't get from me what I thought that what I didn't want to give. So I
Gotcha.
flipped it.
Selection, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And that's, I've always said that, I've always seen or suspected or said that the subconscious will always use your greatest skill and your natural ability and talent and even your purpose as a defense as well, because
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
it's the most available, so it's going to,
Uh-huh. It
the,
came very natural to me.
yeah, that's cool. You're cool. It was nice getting to know you.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's always been nice getting to know you like throughout the classes and stuff. When I came into this journey also recently of just seeing more like healed masculine people in my universe, you were like one of the first ones. I was like, oh, that's what a healed masculine person is like.
Yeah, your mouth to God's ears, right? I think we're all work in progress.
We all are, but yeah, like, I mean, you should see the distortions that I've seen before.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get it. I get it. I do the work. I do, even though I don't want to sometimes, and I know I'm full of shit sometimes. I always do bust myself and then say, God, I'm responsible for that, or these are my emotions, not theirs, and I'm blaming them for my own hurt or abandonment, or I'm blaming them for my own shame and feelings of restriction. And I do work on it, and
And you're just so heart-centered.
yeah, I've worked on that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very apparent.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if someone wants to work with you, how do they find you?
I'm kind of booked up, but
I figured.
yeah, there's always a spot somewhere. I guess that's what I have to deal with, learning to say no, because sometimes I'll work 7 days a week, like
Whoa.
10 hours, 12 hours in one day. Uh, and part of me feels like, what else am I going to do? It's just what I do and I like it. Another part of me says, hey, you got to go to jujitsu. You got to go to the beach. You have to do things for yourself.
Uh-huh.
You
Even
know,
though this doesn't feel like work, it still is.
yeah. Yeah, but I think part of it is like feeling like, oh, someone needs something, and I don't have a right to just be comfortable and refer them out to someone or I don't know. Anyway, my website, well, my phone number, you can text me at 323-377-2531. And my website it's still under, I'm changing stuff all the time, so it may not be, um, there's enough information there.
I'm going to put the links to your NLP course and your law of attraction course as well.
Oh, cool. Thank you. That'll be fun. Saturday's gonna be fun.
I'm
Um,
still trying to digest the NLP course. That was a lot.
yeah, it's a lot. I know. You just take your time and keep going over it, and do
Yeah.
focus on the MER and the diffusion and the dissociation, and then collapsing things and collapsing states, really, and building those states. Those are really the main things. And it's like hypnosis. All we're changing are three things in hypnosis or in NLP. We're changing the importance of something. In NLP, you move it away, you step out of it, right? In hypnosis, we're basically telling the what's called the ACC, the anterior cingulate. We're telling it, like don't pay attention to that pain, or don't pay attention to that. Like it's not, it's unimportant. We do this all the time. You know, we're moving and we cut our hand moving and we don't even notice we're bleeding until later because we're focused on something else.
Yeah, yeah.
So we do that. The second thing we do is all we're doing is changing the internal sensorial experience, the pressure, the size of it, the visual size of the experience, the color, draining the color, making it more holographic. And that's what we're changing in hypnosis too. That's what you do. You tell someone you're not feeling pain, you're feeling cold. You know, the pain is turning into a feeling of cold. So you're changing the kinesthetic experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing we do is changing the meaning of it. We're distorting it.
That's a big one.
Those three things are really all we're really doing.
Yeah. Changing the meaning, I feel like that one is so profound because we create meaning around so many things that just can really take us into it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, just changing the meaning around anything, addiction. You say, oh, like weight loss. Oh, I'm not starving. I'm going into ketosis. That means I'm burning fat. That's a good thing. This intense pressure I'm feeling. You know, this like, there are systems. I forget the name of it. That I think Monroe technique was. I forget the name of it, but they did basically painless childbirth, but without hypnosis. But they changed the meaning. They reframed everything. And by reframing it, people had a different feeling around that pressure. They didn't call it pain, they called it pressure. They didn't call it contraction, they call them surges, or a surge, pressure. They just reframed a lot of things and it really helped people. So in hypnosis, you just supersize all that. And the same thing with NLP, you're doing it directly with NLP. But the main part of that is that energy, the emotional charge. But that can be done the same way. You can change the meaning, you can change the intensity of it, you can notice something else, which is the space around it. So you're changing your experience of it, you're focusing more on the space around it rather than the pain itself.
What do you think about the association between reframing and bypassing?
Well, bypassing, you know, it's kind of dissociating from, you know, compartmentalizing and just separating from something. So you have to deal with it. Kind of what we do. It's the difference between when we do surgery, right? And someone's allergic to anesthesia, you're taking them somewhere else. So you're taking their consciousness out of their body and you're dissociating from the experience because that experience is something you don't want to feel and it's not necessary to pay attention to. So it's kind of like, you know, making it less important, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're putting your attention on something else. So that would be akin to me in an argument with a partner, or, you know, a friend or something. And while we're arguing, I just dissociate and I go to the beach or think about monster trucks in my head, you know, and go, and I'm sort of have to feel the feelings that I would be feeling.
Yeah.
So it's a good technique momentarily to deal with, you know, sometimes it's small, like, you know, just watching a movie or something, but sometimes it's intense, like needing to leave. And it's a good defense mechanism to intense pain. But we always ultimately want to bring that awareness back into the pain
and deal with it,
integrate it or reframe it.
Because I've noticed people sometimes use like the reframing and the releasing to not fully feel.
Yeah, no, that's a trap. Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's what I meant by bypass. Like you're like, oh, like I'm going to bypass how I'm just going to release the pain from this relationship or something, you know?
Those cords and just get them out of my life. Right.
Right. And then you're not dealing with it at all. So you're not learning from it. You're not integrating the lessons from it. You're just releasing. And really it's still in there. So you're actually, instead of releasing, you're repressing.
Or dissociating. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I mean. It can get tricky.
Yeah. And I think they're both valid ways. I think there's a kind of a middle ground where they both kind of feed each other. You know, the resource of the dissociation can start to now come back to the pain that was too intense to really experience. It has
before, and it might be a little less intense. Yeah. So always going back is the key. I like that.
Presence in the body is the key, I find. Yeah, because that's where That's where we're connected to everything.
Well, this was amazing, Joe. Thank you so much. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your evening. It's 1:05 here, so I'm going to go to bed. Thank you.